Okay, so sometime next year, you're going to fall in love with a song, a film, maybe even a novel, and it is going to move you. I mean, you'll share it with friends, critics will praise it, and maybe it will even win a Grammy or an Oscar. And then the creator is going to reveal that AI made most of it. And I think what happens next is going to tell us everything about where culture is headed. That is my first prediction. I've got like seven more. And hopefully by the end, we're going to get into some philosophy about why AI is messing with something fundamental to being human, or, that's what I believe. If you're new here, I'm Shay. I'm a PhD candidate at Harvard and a humanist who wants to give you a sense of agency about our collective AI future. So let's get into it. This is my first voice note. Okay, so prediction number one was the fact that I believe we're going to have a huge cultural reckoning. Let's go back to that song, film, whatever novel that I was talking about earlier. So here's what makes this different from all the AI art debates we've already had. The reveal is going to come after people form an emotional connection to the work. And by the time we find out, we've already decided that, wow, this is amazing. This matters. It did something for me. I already felt something, maybe even cried. Maybe you shared it with someone you love. So then what? Like, do we just take back the emotion? Does it not count anymore? I don't know. I just feel like this is going to force a reckoning we've been putting off. It's not about, oh, can AI make art? It's like, bro, we're so past that. I think the real question is, does it matter how something was made if it genuinely moved you? And if it does matter, where do we draw the line? People are co-creating with different tools and technologies. And yeah, I think I don't know, we're going to have to figure out where we draw the line. And I'm super curious about what you think about this prediction. If you're watching on YouTube, can you just drop your answer in the comments? If you're listening to the podcast, I'd love to hear from you. You can always reply to my newsletter or find me online. Like, you guys are some nerds and I just love chatting with you guys about this. Okay, so prediction number two. I think we're going to have more privacy first AI. So right now, most AI operates on a very simple bargain. You get convenience and they get your data. And that bargain is literally starting to fray. So think about everything that you've poured into AI tools over the past couple of years. Your writing, your questions, your half-formed ideas, your 2 a.m. anxieties, the stuff you'd never Google because it just felt too embarrassing, but you'd ask LOL. You'd ask Chat GPT. And I think more and more people are waking up to what they have handed over. And by 2026, I think we'll see a real shift towards privacy first AI. So think like offline tools, local models that run on your own device, like local LLM models, systems designed to help you without watching you. I don't know. I don't think it'll be driven by paranoia per se. I think it's more so like a deeper understanding about our relationship with these tools and technologies. And at the end of the day, I think trust is about to become like an essential feature of how these technologies should be built. And if not, like, people will vote with their dollars and their feet and their attention. I don't know. Okay, prediction number three. I think we're going to see the rise of small, quote unquote, small AI. So the big AI narrative right now is all about scale, like bigger models, more parameters, companies racing to build these like massive world simulating like systems. And don't get me wrong, like, I think they're still going to continue that race, but I think there's like a quieter like counter movement that's forming. Can I call it a counter movement? I don't know. But it's more so like the idea that smaller AI, or like, how do I say this? Like specialized models designed for very specific tasks. That's what I mean by small AI. They're going to be fast focused, actually usable, like the general purpose models we have right now. We haven't really seen substantive like return on investment in certain sectors and industries, and that's like freaking out a lot of investors, economists, things of that sort. And at the end of the day, in real world use cases, like real workflows, real problems, like these smaller tools will most likely outperform like the giant general purpose models, and not necessarily because they're smarter, like quote unquote smarter, use that lightly, but I think because they're going to do one thing like really, really well. If you read my newsletter or follow me online, you know about the Microsoft AI model that I talked about, and research on like a very specific like personalized cancer diagnostic model, which is really cool how they built that. So that's like an example of small AI. Yeah. Okay, so prediction number 4. Okay, so I think explainable AI, one word, because that's like how it's framed in the literature, is going to become a competitive advantage. Hear me out. So I think, and it might sound like really boring, but I think it's actually huge. I think the companies that win in 2026 are going to be the ones that can explain how their AI actually works. Not necessarily because they're forced to, but because they choose to. And at the end of the day, like the regulations are coming. Like, come on, we've already seen the writing on the wall. New York just passed the RAISE Act. California has AI regulation. The EU Act is rolling out. I don't think data governance and provenance is really optional anymore. Also, I just feel like explainable AI, one word, is so important because we need to understand this black box of a system that was created. Like, we need to be able to eventually audit the decisions that it's making, understand how data is moving through its systems, where that data is coming from, how certain steps in the process that these systems are going through in order to operate. Like all of that, I just believe is going to be so important, and it's going to be a huge competitive advantage if companies just start working on this issue before it's like, okay, now you have to because of regulation. So super important. And I think it's just good for public accountability and transparency purposes that we know how this technology is impacting all of our lives. Yeah. Okay. Prediction number 5. AI is definitely going to become a voting issue. I mean, look, by 2026, I don't think AI policy is going to be a niche concern only for tech people. I'm very interested in AI policy, and AI is literally going to impact every single aspect of our lives: employment, education, healthcare, surveillance, creative work. Like literally, voters are going to notice. And I think we're going to see like a genuine, like single issue voting block emerge around AI. And I don't think it's necessarily because like that's the only thing that matters. I think it's just because of its large scale impact. People are going to evaluate candidates based on where they stand on AI regulation and what it means for your job and your education and your kids' education and your medical care and your privacy. Like literally AI touches all of that. And I think for a lot of people, a candidate's like AI stance is going to really become a proxy for whether or not they value human agency or are thinking, past the next quarter and into the future. Like these are just, a lot of consequences that people are going to have to deal with it. So yeah, hopefully politicians start having AI policy pages because people are going to start caring even more. All right, prediction number 6. Okay, so, I talk a lot about the Renaissance, like, okay, we're entering a new Renaissance period. People are spending more time offline. I started Analog Social in 2024, and that was sort of like, my way of creating spaces for people to support local businesses and to have thinking salons so you can find, intellectual thinking partners and think out loud about, just different ideas and things of that sort. And I want to be careful with this one because I think a lot of people are going to misread what I'm saying or mishear like what I'm saying. So yes, I think people will definitely be spending more time offline, but I don't think that automatically means more community per se, if that makes sense. Why? Because, hobbies are expensive. Showing up in person takes a lot of time and energy. You can't necessarily curate who's at the coffee shop or at your gym or in your like local group in the same way that you can online. But I do think, for example, we'll see a rise in like religious attendance, which by the way has already been happening. Like church attendance has been up across the UK and the US, for example. There's something about structured community with like shared rituals and built-in norms that I think are hard to like replicate elsewhere. And also, for the most part, it's like free to attend, religious services and things of that sort. But here's the nuance. I think people will spend less time in the public online commons, the free for all spaces, like social media spaces and stuff like that, and more time in private siloed communities. So think like smaller groups, clearer boundaries, and honestly, that's another thing. I really underestimated how popular AI companions would become. And I think some people might find like reality too overwhelming. I mean, look what happened in 2025, that they don't want to like burden other humans with it. And therefore they will turn to like AI companions. So yeah, please be your most creative, authentic, real self. Really immerse yourself in new hobbies and activities as much as you can. But at the same time, also recognizing that just because people are spending less time in the online public commons does not mean that they are automatically off their phones. We still have to intentionally choose community. That's what I'm saying. Okay. Prediction number 7. Okay, so I think there's going to be a super huge race for spatial intelligence and sensory data. So this one's like a little bit more technical, but I'm going to try to like break it down as simply as possible. So like a lot of AI researchers are pointing to the quote unquote next frontier of AI development, because they realize that like using large language models, LLMs, and trying to scale that doesn't really like mimic the full breadth of human intelligence, if that makes sense. Like when you are learning something new, you learn not just by reading, you learn by doing, by experiencing the world, the phenomenological experience of humanity, things of that sort. So when I mean spatial intelligence, this is like something that people in the industry use. I'm referring to like world models, systems that basically understand physical space the way that we do. So there's companies like World Labs that are working on this. Professor Jan LeCun recently left Meta to start his own World Labs. And in order to build these systems, you need sensory data, and like a lot of it. So like visual data, audio data, environmental data, like the kind of data you get from wearables, from cameras, from devices embedded in physical spaces. And I wrote about this in my newsletter on like 5 different kinds of data as part of my AI collapse thesis series. So if you haven't read that, check it out. I'll link it in the description. But here's my prediction. I think the big story in 2026 won't just be the rise of spatial AI. It'll be how that data gets acquired. Who's collecting it? What does consent look like? How is it governed? And if you thought like privacy concerns around textual data were like intense, wait until it's your living room, your commute, your body. Like collecting this kind of data is going to have to be governed responsibly. And I think this is honestly where explainability and like data governance become existential questions, more than just like compliance questions, right? Because this is like how people experience the world. And I just want to make sure that, that data is properly governed and protected. Okay. Prediction number 8. I think there's going to be, quote, a recognition rebellion. And this one's like a little bit philosophical, so I'm just gonna like yap even more on this one. Okay, so this is a big one. And yeah, it's gonna require a little philosophy. So like just stick with me and try not to like log off. So I think there's going to be backlash to AI. Yes, okay, big whoops. Like no surprise there. But I don't think it's gonna look like what you'd expect. I don't think it will be people necessarily like rejecting technology. And I don't think everyone will necessarily like just completely like go off the grid. I think it's going to be a rebellion against the way AI has been rolled out, and what it primarily focused on. Because, it's quite sloppy. I mean, a lot of people felt like it was without consent. It was without most people having a say in decisions and how this technology is going to reshape our lives. And yeah, I feel like there's something like much deeper here. So let me explain why. There's a philosopher named Alexandre Kojève who taught like a bunch of lectures on Hegel. So like earlier you heard me say phenomenology. There's Hegel has this book called The Phenomenology of Spirit, which is very dense, hard to understand. But if you want a nice philosophy challenge, I highly recommend that you read it. But yeah, he's basically like a Hegel scholar. And he argued in one of his lectures in like the early 20th century that human beings have a fundamental need. They have a fundamental need for recognition. Not just to exist in this world, but to be seen, to have another conscious human being acknowledge that you are real and that you matter. That is recognition. And for Kojève, this wasn't like a nice to have. This wasn't like a, oh, you know, some humans like this. He said, no, it is the engine of human history, that the thing that drives us to create, to fight, to build societies is our need for recognition. We need others to recognize our existence, for that existence to feel meaningful. I oftentimes, you know, when I'm explaining Alexandre Kojève's theory of recognition, I oftentimes refer people to like the Black is King logo / label on Beyonce's album, and you see those two, I believe it's lions, like the two lions that are like chasing one another, like that's that circle of life, that mutual recognition, that mutual you know, sort of dance that you're in with fellow human beings is replicated through every interaction that we have. Let's go a little bit deeper, because there's like a similar idea in Ubuntu philosophy, which comes from like a South African / Southern African thought tradition / philosophy tradition. And it basically says, I am because you are. And that idea is basically like my humanity is bound up in yours. We don't become fully human in isolation. We become human through our relationships with each other. And I think AI destabilizes both of these in like a really profound way. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like I just, okay, I feel like I'm starting to ramble, but basically when you can't tell what's real and what's fake, when your interactions might be with a machine pretending to be a person, when your creative work feels interchangeable with a prompt, recognition, that thing that makes us feel human, starts to slip away. So what do people do? What are they going to do? Well, I already mentioned that I don't think most people are going to go fully offline. It can be really expensive. You know, you can't really control all the different conditions and things of that sort. Like, you know, like building community is hard. Ask anyone above the age of 30. Like, you know what I mean? Like building that trust and that authenticity, it takes time. Instead, I think people will retreat into private online spaces, curated communities with like a human level of verification, where you can create your own norms and rituals, and maybe places where you know everyone is real and being seen feels possible again. And this is the part I'm still like sitting with, honestly. Like, I think more people are going to form deep relationships with AI companions, which I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm a little worried about. But once again, I underestimated how popular these AI companions were going to be. But they're technically solving for something that is very real, which is loneliness. Because when you think about it, they offer consistency, attention, presence, and in a world where human connection feels very scarce and hard to access, I mean, I don't know, like that matters, right? So is this an adaptation? Is it a symptom? Are people finding what they need or settling for a substitute? Like, honestly, I genuinely don't know. I don't know. And I'm still like thinking through this issue. And yeah, like at the end of the day, I think people will rebel against the feeling of invisibility, that feeling of not feeling seen, against systems that claim intelligence while hollowing out what makes interaction meaningful. Like that's a tension, you know, between our deep need for recognition and the ways that AI is making it maybe even harder to find. I don't know. I think it's just going to define the next chapter of our collective history. So yeah, those are my predictions for 2026. Yeah, it's not really about you know, capabilities or timelines and things of that sort. I'm more so interested in about culture and trust and privacy and what happens when technology collides with something fundamental about being human. So, here is my question for you. Which of these predictions feel most true to you already? And which one are you hoping I'm wrong about? I love having a conversation with you all. If you're on YouTube, tell me in the comments. I will read every single one of them. If you're listening to the podcast, I'd love it if you rate the show 5 stars wherever you're listening. It really does help more people find this conversation that I'm having with you all, and they can also tune in to my stream of consciousness. And if you want to go deeper on any of this, feel free to subscribe to my newsletter, which is linked below. And yeah, thanks for being here. And yeah, hopefully these feel like nice, intimate voice notes that I just sent to you as we're all trying to figure out the future together. All right. Talk to you next time.